And we're live.
Very good. We'll now resume today's regular council meeting of the Township of Cavan-Monaghan. Before we get started, though, we're going to have a moment of silent reflection for our late councillor, Kathy Moore, the Cavan Ward councillor who passed on December 22nd. Thank you. On behalf of council staff and the residents of the Township of Cavan-Monaghan, we certainly pass along our condolences to Kathy's family. On another note, we'd like to pass along our condolences on behalf of council staff and residents to Councillor Tim Belch on the passing of his father, Willoughby Belch, at the age of 94 last night. Condolences, Councillor Belch.
Thank you.
With that, we'll move now into our public meeting. I need a resolution to open the public meeting. Moved by Councillor Belch, seconded by Deputy Mayor Graham. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
Councillor Huntley.
Yes.
Councillor Belch.
Yes.
And Mayor McFadden.
Yes, motion is approved. Next item is 8.2, Allison Luoma, Meridian Planning, and Phil Gerard, proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment regulating cannabis in the Township of Cavan-Monaghan. I'll wait for you to let them in. I see Allison is in. And
through you, Mayor McFadden. Oh, there's Mr. Conley.
Through your worship, the council, just wanted to indicate that unfortunately Phil Gerard, who was going to provide some comment and input and answer some questions with respect to some of the issues around order, was available on the 17th when the council meeting was originally scheduled, but unavailable now as he's in the hearing. He will be providing some written information to follow up with some questions that have been identified, but unfortunately not able to attend with us today. But Allison is here from Meridian. Very
good. Thank you very much. Allison, it's over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Another snowy afternoon for us. So I'd like to start again with this public meeting, just provide a bit of context to that for any members of the public who are tuning in today. This public meeting is a repeat of the public meeting that we undertook in December. This is for an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment being brought forward on the part of the township to better regulate cannabis within the township. At our meeting in December, council wanted to give ample opportunity for the public to bring forward any thoughts, any feedback. So what we're doing is repeating that meeting again today. There will be no new information presented today. It is quite literally a repeat of what we did in December. So next slide, please. So over the past year, the Township of Cavan-Monaghan has undertaken a study to investigate how cannabis production can best be regulated in the township. The purpose of this study is to provide recommendations for commercially licensed cannabis operations. The study does not address the cultivation of cannabis for personal use or cannabis grown for medicinal uses as would be prescribed by a physician. Next slide, please. So over the last little while, we have done a number of things. This all began with a report to council back in December of 2020. At that time, council requested that we do an addendum to the report that provided some additional options and some additional details to the original options. We worked on that throughout a good chunk of 2021 and brought those revised findings to a public open house in October, and then followed that up with the statutory public meeting in December. So again, we are repeating that statutory public meeting. The draft documents that were presented in December, which was the official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and site plan, remain in the same form that they were. They haven't changed. Those are the same documents that we're talking about today. Next slide, please. So just to frame this again in terms of the legislative context, the federal government is responsible for administering Canada's cannabis production licensing process. So should a landowner wish to grow cannabis or in any way process cannabis, they must get a license from Health Canada. The Federal Act also provides for the division of responsibilities between the various levels of government. Next slide, please. So this table provides a breakdown essentially of who does what. So again, at the federal level, it's Health Canada who issues the licenses and establishes those divisions of authorities. The provincial government authorizes the distribution and retail sale of cannabis. The provincial government also has further recognized cannabis cultivation as an agricultural operation subject to the policies of the provincial policy statement and normal farm practices. At a municipal level, as with all land uses, the municipality can regulate the circumstances under which cannabis production and cultivation may occur. This includes having provisions in the official plan and the zoning bylaw. Any cannabis producers must meet these municipal requirements and must further provide the municipality with written notice of either the issuance of a license, amendment of a license, suspension or revocation of a license, and reinstatement as well. So the municipality must very much be kept in the loop, and the municipality may proceed to actually put in place some controls of their own. Next slide, please. Currently, the official plan for the township does not contain any policies to regulate cannabis production or cultivation in the township. The official plan is essentially silent on this matter at this time. In other words, conversely, the township's comprehensive zoning bylaw does provide some regulations for cannabis. Those are found in section 11.7 of the zoning bylaw. And currently, the township zoning bylaw does permit a cannabis production facility as of right in the urban employment zone. That's the M1 zone that's located in the Millbrook employment area. Next slide, please. So in terms of the tools available to the municipality to regulate cannabis, they can rely on the official plan, the zoning bylaw, and site plan control. All of these municipal tools work together to effectively guide and regulate the use of land within the township, including cannabis. So it's now council's direction at this time that we update the township's planning documents to address the siting of cannabis facilities in a more comprehensive way. Next slide, please. So the official plan amendment includes policies for both cannabis production facilities and outdoor cannabis cultivation. This includes definitions for each of these two uses. It specifies what official plan designations these uses would be permitted in, as well as to provide a host of use-specific policies directing how these uses would be established or criteria to establishing these uses. Next slide, please. So in terms of definitions, there was two things here that I wanted to point out to you. So the cannabis production facility is any building or structure that's used for cultivation, producing, packaging, testing, any processing of the cannabis, but it is within a building or structure. Outdoor cannabis cultivation is literally just that. It is the growing of crops. In both situations, these facilities and the outdoor cultivation must be licensed by Health Canada, and these uses must accord to those license requirements. Next slide, please. So what we are proposing in the official plan amendment is that a cannabis production facility, that's being the indoor cannabis facility, is permitted within the official plan designations for the employment areas, both urban and rural, and within the agricultural and rural areas. That includes those that are ag and rural, but also within the Oak Ridges Marine context of that. In and of itself, having a cannabis production facility permitted within the official plan designation is not enough to establish that use. The zoning must also be in place before a use can be established. And we are proposing at this time that although permitted in the official plan designation, an indoor cannabis production facility may only be established by way of zoning bylaw amendment. So there will be no as of right permission in the zoning bylaw that would correspond to the official plan designation. There would still be a process at the zoning level that must occur. Outdoor cannabis cultivation, we are proposing that be permitted as of right in the ag and rural areas, and again, in the Oak Ridges Marine areas accordingly. Across the board in all cases, these uses would be subject to a minimum 300-meter separation distance from surrounding sensitive land uses. Next slide, please. In addition to that minimum 300 meter separation distance from sensitive land uses, we're also proposing that outdoor cannabis cultivation must be set back a minimum of 50 meters from the lot line of the lot on which the cannabis crop is located. And just by way of summary, sensitive land uses are defined by the province, and these include all residential, essentially residential and community uses within the township. So this would be community centers, parks, long-term care facilities, hospitals, schools, those would all be considered sensitive land uses. Next slide, please. So the official plan also contains a host of policies addressing development criteria. So in other words, if a landowner was interested in establishing a cannabis production facility, they must satisfy these policy requirements. These policies address such things as mitigation of adverse effects. So that would include noise, odor, dust, and light. No outdoor storage is permitted. They would only be permitted in new purpose-built buildings, so no retrofit buildings. All buildings would be subject to site plan control. There are a number of identified criteria that council would need to consider prior to making or giving a municipal approval for these types of facilities, and that includes consideration of environmental impacts, servicing, waste management, parking, and traffic. Further, there's a number of identified studies that would have to accompany a zoning bylaw amendment application or a site plan application. This is no different than any other planning application that is submitted. In the back of the official plan, there is a section that provides a whole menu list of studies that the township could require in support of a land use planning application if that information was required. What we're doing here with these cannabis policies is identifying a set of required policies or required studies that must be included with any zoning bylaw amendment application. And it also has policies that address cannabis as an agriculture related use. Next slide, please. So the zoning bylaw amendment is the implementing vehicle for the official plan policies. It applies at a property level. It is much more specific than the official plan. The zoning bylaw amendment will provide regulations for cannabis production facilities and outdoor cannabis cultivation. I should point out also that currently the zoning regulations of section 11.7 will be deleted in their entirety and then replaced with the new ones that are being proposed. So the zoning bylaw amendment, it adds a number of new definitions to the zoning bylaw. It deletes the existing as of right permission for cannabis production facility in the urban employment zone in Millbrook. Now that said, where there is an existing use, that use would continue to exist as a legal non-conforming use. However, any expansion of that use or the citing of any new uses would be subject to the conditions and the standards of the new zoning bylaw amendment once that is in effect. The zoning bylaw amendment is adding as of right permissions for outdoor cannabis cultivation to the agricultural and rural zones. And it is providing a host of use specific regulations for the siting of such facilities. Next slide, please. So again, this just points out the very specific zones that we would be permitting cannabis cultivation as of right. So that's the agricultural zone, the rural zone, and the Oak Ridges Moraine Countryside Zone. Any other cannabis production facilities are by zoning bylaw amendment only. Next slide, please. So section 11.7, which has all of the use-specific zoning requirements, is going to be revised and replaced, including provisions that only the uses of a single license holder may be permitted on a single lot. Other than cultivation, all other cannabis uses may only occur in a wholly enclosed building, only in new purpose-built buildings. We've introduced minimum lot and setback requirements. No outdoor storage is permitted. We've included minimum parking and loading requirements. We have also included some regulations, essentially co-location, where a cannabis production facility is not permitted on a lot with a bed and breakfast establishment, agritourism use, home business, or home industry. There is no accessory sale of cannabis or related products, and the zoning bylaw just reinforces that cannabis uses will be subject to site plan control. Next slide, please. So site plan control is even more specific than the zoning. That occurs at an individual property level where the zoning standards and regulations are actually implemented in that particular scenario. The site plan control bylaw needs to be amended just to be consistent with the zoning bylaw in the sense that cannabis operations are not exempt from site plan control and that they would be required. Next slide, please. So in terms of next steps, the township will now receive comments from the public as well as a variety of agencies that review these documents on behalf of the township. Once those comments are received and the documents are finalized, they come back to council. Once council has adopted the documents, the official plan amendment in particular is forwarded on to the County of Peterborough for approval. The County of Peterborough is the approval authority for the province. And then we move forward from there. Next steps. Sorry, next slide. If you have any comments, they can be directed to Mr. John Connolly. He's the Director of Planning Development at the township. And certainly we encourage members of the public to share any thoughts they may have with us. And next slide, please. At that point, I think I will turn it back over to Mayor McFadden to manage the next portion of this meeting.
Very good. Thank you very much. Alison, any questions now for Alison? We'll certainly come back to it because we're going to do the report next, but if there's anything quick before we get to the report, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
I'm not sure if it's appropriate to discuss now, so I'll ask the question and then I can always wait. So excuse me for that. One of my major questions with regards to this cannabis production facilities is the erection of them on ag lands. And I understand OMAFRA recognizes, with the cultivation definitions that cannabis qualifies for a crop, just like anything else. But to me, what makes it different that I'm cautious or maybe concerned about in protecting is the fact that if we're building or erecting these purpose-built facilities on prime ag lands, other than a potential industrial agricultural entity coming in to take over production of that facility or repurposing it to lettuce growth or anything of that nature, those lands are really permanently removed from the food cycle. And so I guess one of my concerns about is also related to the taxation reality of the erection of those buildings. I mean, I fully support the farm subsidy for the agricultural lands, but to me, this is an industrial operation, whether it's cultivation or not. And I want to ensure, or I think it's only appropriate, that any of these sort of purpose-built CPFs are not eligible for that same sort of land taxation subsidy, and that they're paying a more, I don't know what the rate is. I've had some conversations with other municipalities that have been working on their own bylaw, and it seems to be something that's sort of an afterthought, and I don't want to lose sight of it to inform and make sure that we're covered with our ZBA and it's all going to have that purpose and intention to not, sensitive to the reality of the implications of taking that land from a more traditional agricultural cultivation purpose to a more industrial scale production facility.
Go ahead, Alison or John.
Sure. So what I know of that is that MPAC assesses these uses where if it's cultivation, it's assessed as an agricultural use. If it is a production facility, MPAC will send somebody out to do any kind of sort of site visit and inspect what they are doing. And if the production facility is deemed by MPAC to be more of an industrial use, then an industrial assessment is applied to that. That is true whether the facility is in an employment zone. So you could have if you have an indoor facility in an employment zone, the cultivation portion would be assessed agriculturally, whereas the processing would be assessed industrially. My best recommendation is to reach out to your local MPAC office. But to the best of my knowledge, that's handled on a site-by-site specific basis where MPAC goes out and makes that determination of where the split between ag and industrial assessment occurs.
So just a follow up, if I could, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Would we have, so I guess if MPAC is going to make that their assessment criteria there, is there the flexibility for the municipality to have, you know, like we're having special zoning areas and special exclusions or allowances and things of that nature? Are we able to create our own special tax class for those sorts of production facilities? Like I said, if OMAFRA is going to recognize it as cultivation, that's, you know, that's their they can do that if they like. But, you know, from a municipal standpoint, if we're going to create these special zoning areas, could we also create what we might deem as a more appropriate tax class for those sorts of facilities so that we're not adding undue burden onto other municipal taxpayers?
So if that's a question directed my way, I would actually defer that to your finance people at the township. I wouldn't be able to give you an answer on that.
Very good, Ms. Pope. And I don't know whether you'll be prepared to answer that, but we can certainly make it a takeaway because we're not approving anything today. We're just for consideration. Ms. Pope.
Absolutely. As far as the CVA calculation to determine what the property CVA value is, that really is with MPAC. I know that I've had conversation and emails back and forth with John Connolly and himself as well. So that would be based on the actual unit itself, the business itself, and they use regression analysis. So it's completely outside of what the municipality could determine. However, once they've set what that CVA value is and provided us with the realty tax class, whether it be commercial, industrial, or farm, or whatever it is, then we would multiply that by our tax rate. So really, we're at the mercy of MPAC to determine the individual property, what the assessment value is in the current value assessment. We don't have control over that. And then we'd be able to provide you with the financial calculation once that information is provided to us. So what I'm understanding from reading other municipalities and what's happening is it really depends on what's happening at the property. It's not a simple answer that's simply a farm or simply a residential property or simply a type of business. It can be, because there's even some discussion about whether or not they include in the CVA value the equipment along with the land and the actual building itself. So it's outside of our purview to determine the CVA value and the realty tax class, but once that's provided, we can provide you with calculation.
Thank you.
Very good. Councillor Huntley.
Sorry, hitting the button too many times. Through you, Chair. I do believe we have the power, though, to create a special development charge based on that. Do we not, Ms. Paul?
Sorry, a development charge. So if we have growth in the community and we have a municipal infrastructure that we want to be able to charge a developer a certain fee for a service or a building that we have proposed for the future for our community, we can establish a DC related to that component, but you're talking about individual businesses. So we wouldn't be levying to the developer a DC in relation to a municipal business. This isn't a municipal business and it's not a municipal facility available to all. So that wouldn't be DC eligible, no.
Through you, Chair, to follow up, but didn't we do something like that for things like windmills? Like what was the difference there? Or wind turbines, I guess.
The wind turbines. I'd have to defer that to the director, John Connolly, on the wind turbines. There is a particular DC aspect there, you're correct. And I'm not sure what the provision was for that purpose, but we might have to look into that to give you why that could be included.
Before Mr. Connolly gets into it, I know we do have an upcoming DC discussion. I think it would be relevant to take that one offline because I think we're just poking at it right now. Councillor Huntley, you raise a great point. We do have a specific thing in there specific to industrial wind turbines. I know it has to be something that's broad across all classes, so it's not property specific. But if the classification, for example, was a cannabis cultivation or something along those lines, is it possible for that specific classification in order to have a development charge, if I understand your question correctly, Councillor Huntley?
Exactly.
Okay, very good. And we'll take that one away and have that conversation and come back with a response.
Thank you.
Any further questions before we move on to Mr. Connolly's report? Seeing none. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Connolly.
So through your worship to the rest of the council, what you have before you is Planning Report 2022-01. This is regulating cannabis in the Township of Cavan-Monaghan, second public meeting. Recommendations are twofold. One, that council review and consider all public and agency verbal and written comments received regarding these applications to date, including the second public meeting. And then secondly, the proposed official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and site plan control amendments to be presented to council at a future date for consideration.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. Conley? Next step will be to open it up to members of the public to hear their comments. Seeing none? Okay. Madam Clerk, we'll go to the attendees to see who is, we have lots. I can suggest you raise your hand and then I can let you in certainly to speak on this particular topic. I'll go slow because I know it is technology, and I'm sure there are several right now trying to figure out how to get that hand to go up. And I do see several in the attendees list. This is the public's opportunity to speak to the cannabis report. Okay, I see one Lenny. If you could let him in. Okay, over to the panelists.
Dear Mayor McFadden, I have promoted Lenny. I'm not sure if they would like to speak or not.
Okay.
Hey there, just figuring
There we
out
go.
the buttons here.
Welcome, Lenny.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all doing well and staying safe. So, Mayor McFadden, would you like me to launch into a presentation or just to address some of the points made within the actual report itself?
If you've got a presentation, I just need a motion to council in order for the clerk to put it up, that's all. So with that, then can I get a motion from council for this presentation? Moved by Councillor Belch, seconded by myself. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Oh, you're muted, Councillor Belch.
Yes.
and Mayor McFadden.
Yes, motion is approved. Madam Clerk, do you have a copy of the presentation or?
Just give me one moment, Mayor McFadden, and we're just going to bring it up here. Just give me 1 second. Mayor McFadden, Ms. Kavanaugh's just bringing it up. Just give us 1 moment.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you, Cindy.
They they do wonders behind the scenes for us. Thank you.
I appreciate everyone's patience. Okay, well, Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lenny Kerman. I am from Longhouse Craft Cannabis today, but in particular, I act as a business development and sales executive within the cannabis community, which I'll, of course, present to you a little bit of background about myself in just a brief second. Do you mind advancing the slide, Cindy? Thank you. So in particular, Longhouse Craft Cannabis is an applicant for a legal cannabis operation to cultivate as well as process cannabis within the legal cannabis framework. In particular, I have been tasked to assist Longhouse Craft Cannabis with their operational needs as well as their business development and sales needs and product design. If you don't mind just advancing the slide, that'd be great. Thank you. So a little bit about myself. I've been in finance as well as cannabis for quite some time. Finance, I've been in that industry since 2003, and cannabis I've been working within since 2015, when the initial Cannabis Act was being developed. My specialty is more so in business development and building out the operations of the cannabis enterprise. I'm a founder of a firm by the name of Cannabis Manufacturers Guild, which acts as a business development service for the licensed producer network in cannabis, as well as I run a sales team, which is called C3 Agency, which provides marketing and social media services for cannabis. In particular, I was asked to join today by an associate of mine for the purpose of representing how odor mitigation works within a cannabis facility. Saying that, of course, though, I open myself up to council to provide any questions in relation to the overall industry, as well as any business related questions associated with licensed producers or processor within Canada. Please advance the next slide. So starting off with some of the concerns that I have typically addressed within various communities is the odor mitigation strategy. First and foremost, what I always like to just represent is that when those who don't understand or have a great deal of background within cannabis, when grown provides a very skunky type flavor or smell to the overall community, and when not appropriately addressed or mitigated, that can sometimes be a smell that smaller towns as well as larger towns don't really appreciate. So in particular, Health Canada took steps to ensure that the facilities have to take an undertaking to prevent that smell or that odor leakage. And specifically directly from the actual act, we hear that Health Canada regulates medical cannabis producers and requires that facilities are equipped with an air filtration system to prevent the escape of odors under provision 61 of the Access to Cannabis for Medical Purposes regulations. Now, I'm not necessarily an expert in HVAC or electrical, but I will provide some background and knowledge in that. Number one, a HEPA filter alone or just a typical air filtration system will not mitigate the smell associated with cannabis, because typically those odor molecules are much smaller than a HEPA filter and has the capability of mitigating. So what usually most cannabis facilities, legal cannabis facilities, operate within is they do a three-pronged approach to ensure that smell is mitigated. So when you're walking into an illegal operation versus a legal operation, what you'll notice is that the biggest differentiator is the fact that the HVAC is created in such a way to create a completely locked ventilation system, versus in an illegal operation, they don't want smell leaking out. They'll have some odor reducers like Febreze pucks or things like that to try to reduce the smell. Legal operations don't work within that way whatsoever. Proper cultivation requires to have a much more nuanced approach to odor reduction. So moving to the next slide, please. The first and most important part of actually reducing the smell, of course, of any facility is to ensure that the facility is appropriately built out and sealed, as well as there's a negative pressure inside the actual facility itself. That helps to reduce the odor. So what you'll notice is, if you've ever been inside of a cannabis facility that's a licensed producer facility, is there are multiple airlock systems associated once you're stepping into the grow area. And of course, any facility that is going to be built that is a legal operation within the Cavan Monaghan area must also abide by those exact same criteria. So what that means to the layman is that less air is being brought in, then more air is being pushed out to ensure that you have that negative pressure system so that air just does not leak out in that sense. But to do that unto itself, that would not necessarily create a odor reduction to the level that probably what the city council would require. The second step is the next slide, please, which is of course using a HEPA filtration system associated or in conjunction with that negative pressure system. And most licensed facilities have state-of-the-art HVAC systems involved in them. They are usually spending between $25,000 to $50,000 each room on that HVAC type of system. So to give some context associated with how these guys build out these operations, typically one is required to have separate air filtration systems for each room that they're stepping into. Again, a further way to help reduce the overall smell associated, but typically they're not necessarily doing it for the odor aspect. They're installing these HEPA filtration systems simply because to have crop loss is a major issue within the cannabis industry, and the genetics of the cannabis plant are not strong enough that once a pathogen is introduced to a grow room, it can actually run through that grow room quite quickly and completely destroy the crop. So a HEPA filtration system helps them avoid crop loss like that, but also in conjunction with other systems, it of course reduces the overall smell. The major silver bullet as it relates to odor reduction, aside from of course the negative pressure system and HEPA filtration, is really the next slide, which is of course a carbon filter. And all cannabis facilities that are legal facilities, please advance the next slide, are equipped with sizable amount of carbon filtration, much like those used in a Brita filter. That is typically a carbon filter. It allows you to take out smaller molecules that are potential pathogens, but also odor-related molecules are going to, of course, be filtered out by a proper carbon filter system. So to kind of explain the overall air neutralizing structure associated with a cannabis facility, one would think that the air comes in and number one, it stays within the facility. That's the first thing. That's that negative pressure comment I made as my first, I guess, information slide. The second step, of course, is to ensure that that air is being cleaned and funneled through a carbon filter. So the carbon filter will attach actually directly to the HEPA filter system and ensure that all air that is going through the HEPA filter, as well as coming out of the air filter, has been carbon neutralized, has been pathogen neutralized, and then it's going to be recycled within the facility itself. So any good facility, it may have some odor here and there, in the sense, and when I say some odor here and there, we're talking about 5 to 10 meters smelled from the facility. But most facilities past that are legally built and appropriately built, having the appropriate HEPA filter and carbon filter and negative air filtration system, will not actually have that air, that smell and odor reduction. So anytime that you've been driving on a highway and you happen to smell that, that typically denotes that there probably is some kind of a legal grow operation and not a legal operation. Legal operations, typically, I've been through many of them, you will not be able to tell that they're a legal cannabis operation from the outside, aside from maybe a sign that actually states that they are. So that will hopefully address that odor discussion that sometimes comes up when I'm speaking to city council, in that most facilities that are legal and large will have all three of these, not just one of these. They'll actually have all three, and they'll have multiple units of these to reduce the smell, but also to ensure that they're crop loss. I always like to say things like that and be as transparent as possible to the committee, because if they understand that interests are aligned, they understand that there's going to be consistent motivation going forward, regardless of what changes happen within bylaws or regulatory regimes. And the large aspect and the reason that most of these cannabis companies are doing this is, of course, to have the councils and committees approve them. But secondly, like I said, is their biggest concern is crop loss. And they install these systems to avoid their crop loss and make sure that their yields are not at risk for having to be burned or not used whatsoever. So like I said, I'm not here to belabor the point too much as it relates to odor. The one comment I wanted to make on the report that was just represented is the concept and introduction of a moratorium on sale and accessories of cannabis products. In some of these licensed producers, they have something called a farm gate store available to them. and that's part of the actual Cannabis Act itself. It's something that should be considered in conjunction with any legislation or bylaw that gets written by of course, the council here.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Kerman. Yes, the issue of odor has certainly been raised at the previous public meeting.
Through
We
you, Mayor
have
McFadden. Can we
Yes.
can we get Mr. Kerman's address?
absolutely, Mr. Kerman, just name and address. Obviously, we got your name, address, and address.
Email address, you can email me at L.
No, sorry, just a street address. That's just that's the clerk asking.
Okay, no problem. 71 Mitchell, Mitchell Place, Newmarket.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Ms. Page, for keeping me on my toes. Very good. Lenny, thank you very much for that information. Before we move on to the next delegation, is there any members of council that have any questions relative to odor? I know it certainly has been raised at the last public meeting. Go ahead, Councillor Huntley.
Through you, Chair, to Lenny, I guess you've indicated that this is in the cannabis producer's best interest to have these odor reducing things, but it's not a requirement or legislated to have these in place, is it?
It's not legislated that they have to have a carbon filter system, but it is legislated that it actually is in the Cannabis Act, Section 61, that the licensed producer must make every attempt to reduce the odor, leakage, I guess we'll call it, out of their facility. So it is part of the actual act itself that they must reduce their odor, but I always like to be as forthcoming as possible with people, and I like to be the catalyst in the room sometimes, and that allows me to explain to people that even if for some reason that the government of Canada were to change that, it's still in the best interest for the actual licensed producer to maintain these HVAC systems and make sure that that carbon filtration happens for a variety of different reasons associated, not necessarily with odor. So yes, it is mandated that they do actually mitigate that odor, but I also want to give you the other side of the equation as well.
So follow-up question. So it's mandated they reduce an odor, but it's not dictated on how they do it.
That's correct. It just suggests it has to be for a HEPA filtration system, which in my eyes, in my experience, is not necessarily to be the be-all and end-all as it relates to odor reduction. There usually is a much larger approach that licensed producers take to achieve that that goal.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Sorry, Deputy Mayor, did you have your hand up? No. Okay. All right. If there is no further questions, then I want to thank Mr. Kerman very much for that information, and I will look to other participants to see who else is going to come in. Thank you again. Okay, so I'm back out on the attendees. If you wish to speak specifically to this cannabis report, this is the second public meeting. Raise your hand and you can be brought in to address council. I don't see any hands going up. I want to be patient to provide everybody with the ability to raise their hand. Okay, I don't see any further hands then. So it would be back to council then for consideration of the report, which is before us as a recommendation. Again, we're not approving anything today. This is literally to receive all public comment and to have it brought back at a future council meeting. Okay, Councillor Belch, move the recommendation. Second. Deputy Mayor Graham, any further questions, comments? Mr. Conley, we're good?
Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
we're good. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Thank you very much, Allison, and thank you, Mr. Conley. And we have a question from Mr. Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yeah, it was just I had no issues with the motion. I just assumed that Director Connolly will have comments with regards to what, from the implications with regards to the filtration systems, that he'll speak to that at a later date as well, from maybe if there's information that's provided in the delegation to ensure that the systems that are required in our township will not fall short of the intention.
Through your worship to Councillor Graham, Deputy Mayor Graham, I should say, is that all of this will be included in the report. It'll be not only identifying the comments, but also the delegation. And as I indicated before, we have Mr. Phil Gerard, who will also be providing some written comments, which will be part of that because it was raised at our first meeting and is obviously an issue of interest, great interest of the community. So it will be addressed. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Can I get a motion then to close the public meeting? Got Councillor Belch and Councillor Huntley. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Moving into delegations, and a quick question for council. We've almost been an hour. Does anybody need a break before we continue into the delegation? No? Okay. All right, then we'll move into our delegation. Item 9.1, April Foster and Chris Arnoux from the Kawartha Pine Ridge District School Board, EDGE program expansion. We'll await welcoming of April and Chris. I see April. And there's April's got her camera turned on, and Chris is coming.
Chris is on his way. There he is.
There's Chris. And there we go. Welcome, Chris, and welcome, April. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship, Mayor McFadden, and fellow council members for allowing us to present to you today. Before we get started with our presentation, I'm asking your indulgence to allow Vice Chairperson Lloyd to bring opening greetings.
Oh, very good. Just for technicalities, we'll just pass a resolution here to permit them to speak. Can I get a resolution? We got Deputy Mayor Graham and Councillor Huntley. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
I apologize for the rookie move. Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
and Councillor Huntley.
Yes.
I will
Motion is
promote
approved. And just for clarity, Ms. Page, do you need the spelling of the name or are you clear?
for Angela Lloyd.
You're good?
I believe that's who we're promoting. Is that correct, Mayor McFadden?
I'm looking to the head nodding. Yes, that is who it is.
Perfect. And I will, yeah, if we can just, yes, if we can please confirm Angela's, oh, it's on her name. So I think we're good there, Mayor McFadden.
There you go. Correct. Angela has been welcomed in.
Thank you, Your Worship, Mayor McFadden. And I am truly touched by the kind words you had for your councillor, as well as the loss for Councillor Belch. Thank you so much for allowing us to present today. I know we've had many challenges with weather and everything else. There's been a lot of work that's done on this in the background, and I hope everyone will give this due consideration because during these times, it's so important that we work together for our communities because we're all in this together. So with that, I will turn it back over to April, and I thank you again.
Thank you very much, Angela. April and Chris, the floor is yours to begin.
Thank you, and thank you, Trustee Lloyd. We're here today to discuss the EDGE program expansion at Crestwood Secondary School. With us today are members of the Kawartha Pine Ridge District School Board community. That includes Trustee Angela Lloyd, Anne Marie Duncan, myself, April Foster, Chris Arnoux, and Steve Earle. If you can move to the next slide, please. We have put together a short agenda, what we'll be discussing with you today. It'll start with a project overview, then discuss the EDGE program at Crestwood Secondary School, look at an existing board partnership, see what the future site could look like, review some of the student population data at both Crestwood Intermediate and Crestwood Secondary School. We'll then look at the benefits of a partnership between the township and the board, and then finally what a partnership agreement could look like. You can move to the next slide, please. So the EDGE program expansion project will consist of 4 phases. The first phase includes building enhancements within Crestwood Secondary School to support the EDGE program. Our facilities department is working with the school principal and the EDGE program staff to complete this work over the summer of 2022. Phase 2 would be the installation of an artificial turf field. This would replace the current grass field that is at the school, and it would also see the installation of a 4-lane training track. The board is seeking council's support for this phase of the project. The board is also utilizing a third-party organization to try and seek out various grant opportunities that could support the capital cost of this project. Phase 3 would include the installation of a dome to cover the artificial turf field. This would allow full year access to the field. The board is working with the Crestwood Alumni Association to raise the funds to support this phase of the project. And phase 4 would include the installation of an accessible baseball diamond on the property. The board is working with the Challenger Baseball Association to secure funding for this phase. The timing and the order of phases 3 and 4 would be dependent on when the organizations the board is partnering with can secure their funding. But the Kawartha Pine Ridge District School Board is both excited and enthusiastic to think of the amazing facilities we have the opportunity to create. The installation of an accessible baseball diamond would be the first in our area and would provide safe, inclusive athletic space for our students and community members to utilize, as well as the opportunities that the installation of a dome would provide not only for our students, but our community as well. And these would be facilities that would be in your community as part of the Township of Cavan Monaghan. Move to the next slide, please. So the EDGE program is an athletic program run out of Crestwood Secondary School. The vision of the program is to become a leader in utilizing athletic development to inspire student athletes to achieve excellence in their academic and athletic fields. Through the program, the school strives to become a provincial leader of inclusive athletic development, supporting student athletes in the able-bodied, parasport, and Special Olympic communities. There's been significant interest in the program. There are currently 122 students in the EDGE program, with the demand consistently increasing. Currently, there are space limitations within the school that restricts the number of students that can be accepted into the program. The installation of an artificial turf field that in the future would hopefully see a dome installed would provide the space necessary for the program to grow. And as it stands, with the growth of the EDGE program, they have been required to take over rooms that have impact on both tech and science offerings in the school, as well as displaces other sports teams. With the domed field, the program could increase space for 4-season programming by approximately 12 times and free up space for the thriving tech and physics programs. And we do have a faculty representation here in case counselors have questions about the program once we finish. We can move to the next slide, please.
Thanks, April. So just for a little context, we do have an existing partnership in Peterborough right now with the city of Peterborough. And that is with the Thomas A. Stewart Secondary School and that artificial turf field. So when that was installed, we split the cost 50-50 with the city. It was a joint project. It's been in place for about 8 years right now. And the city actually manage our community use on that field. We provide them with the time and hours that we require the field, and they book community use for the field throughout the balance of the year and share revenue with us 50-50. We have a structure in place where each party agrees to set aside $25,000 annually from the revenue generated through community use. And the idea behind that is to cover off the cost of any maintenance, repairs, and ultimately over a 10-year period, replacement of the turf. The city of Peterborough also take care of the utility bills with the lights associated with the field. We in turn take care of day-to-day operation and cleaning and maintenance of the field. And that's not what we're looking for through Cavan Monaghan, but it is just to give you an idea what was involved with the one partnership that we do have with the artificial turf field, and we'll get to what we're specifically hoping from the township shortly. So the next slide. If you could go to the next slide, thank you.
So the board utilized a landscape architectural firm to do a drawing of what the proposed future facilities at Crestwood Secondary School could look like. You can see the proposed artificial turf field and the 4-lane training track, as well as for reference, we've included where the accessible baseball diamond would be situated. And this is where an existing baseball diamond sits now. We can move to the next slide, please. So displayed is some actual and projected enrollment data indicating the percentage of Cavan Monaghan students as a percentage of the total population at Crestwood Intermediate and Crestwood Secondary School. And we are mindful that with the significant growth in the Millbrook area currently, our projections may be lower than what transpires, but we're working with the best information we currently have available. So the actual 2020-2021 enrollment saw 59% of the student population at Crestwood Intermediate coming from the township of Cavan Monaghan. With the growth in the township, we project this number to increase to closer to 70% over the next 10 years. And at Crestwood Secondary School, the actual 2020-2021 enrollment saw 36% of its student population coming from your township, which we anticipate growing to 50% over the next 10 years. And over the next 10 years, we expect to see approximately 1,400 Cavan Monaghan students go through these two schools, and these students would benefit from the usage of the field as members of the school community. Next slide, please.
So I guess just to highlight a few of the benefits that we derive from an artificial turf field, namely a much longer season to use the field. Annually, I know our principals are told on all of our sites to keep students and the community off fields for sometimes a fairly lengthy period of time in the spring while we're waiting for thaw and fields to dry up a little bit. So the time that we have available to use the field is reduced, and the cost involved in maintaining those fields is quite significant. And we have found with Thomas Stewart that we do enjoy a lot of the benefits with a longer time frame involved. The EDGE program itself is picking up steam, and there's been a great deal of interest in the program. I know much like some of our schools, we have magnet programs, Thomas Stewart with the Integrated Arts program, and Kenner Collegiate with our International Baccalaureate program. Having a very athletic focused program at Crestwood, we have great expectations for, and a field like this would be a great asset to the program. We do recognize that the township has limited resources, as do we, and we're really hoping through our presentation and answering any questions following the presentation that we can convince you of the mutual benefit to both the township as well as our students without the help of a partner. And as April had alluded to, additional sources of capital, getting a program like this off the ground would be challenging if possible at all. So if you could switch to the next slide, and we can I guess a matter of cut to the chase. The reason that we had articulated the arrangement with the city of Peterborough on Thomas Stewart was to give some context into that relationship and the fact that that overall project was in the neighborhood of $2.7 million, and that does not count the cost of the land which we had available at Thomas Stewart and used for the project. In this particular case, we have the land available at Crestwood. We are requesting that the town consider contributing $500,000 towards the capital costs. We have a number of possibilities available that way, but certainly even splitting that sum between 2 fiscal years for the township would be something quite workable for us as well. The overall cost of this project, putting the artificial turf field on the field, would be approximately $2.5 million. We are not envisioning that the township have the resources or the desire to get involved in managing the community use partnership piece, nor absorbing any costs with respect to utilities or operation or maintenance for the building or for the field. So it would be a straight capital contribution at the beginning, and in exchange, we would hope to apply some signage acknowledging contribution from the township, as well as structure it so that the township and community groups within the township had preferred booking privileges on the field for the length of time that that the field would be open. We would envision that to be about 8 months. And I think, April, I think that's the last slide.
Yep.
So, Mr. Mayor, subject to any questions, that would be our presentation and our ask for the project.
Very good. Thank you, Chris, and thank you, April. And I will open it up to members of council with questions. Councillor Huntley.
Through you, Chair, and thanks for the presentation, April. But in full disclosure, is my oldest son is actually in the EDGE program, so I see the benefits from it, and I think it's fantastic, and I know how much he loves the program. From a municipal standpoint, I don't know if you saw our budget debates last week, but $500,000 is an awfully big price tag that we were, nickeling and diming, much less, numbers in our last budget. So I'm struggling to figure out where we would come up with this. And I don't know whether you have suggestions.
I do. We'll get into more of that discussion a little bit later, but I think we might have a pleasant surprise when it comes to development charges and the application thereof. So, but again, everything seems to relate back to development charges today. That may very well be another discussion. Councillor Belch, did I see a hand up?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Through you, Mayor, I'm very interested. I'm not familiar with the EDGE program. Could I just get a little bit of background on what it is exactly?
April or Chris, or do you want to call a friend? We have others that are waiting.
With your permission, would we be able to invite Steve Earle to speak?
Absolutely. Is that all right with council? I can get a motion. Motion then from Councillor Belch and Councillor Huntley. Madam Clerk, recorded vote for Steve Earle.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
and Deputy Graham.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham, I apologize.
Motion is approved. We will welcome in Stephen. Another Crestwood graduate, by the way. I see 3 out of 4 members of council here today are former Crestwood graduates. And I believe, Steve, you were a few years behind at least myself.
Mayor McFadden, I will send him a notice to unmute. Maybe
There we go. Hi, can you guys hear me now?
If you could speak a little louder, Steve.
Okay. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. I'll just try to get myself organized here. Yeah. So the program, to answer the question proposed there, was started a couple of years ago, and the idea was focusing on health and wellness for students. So the students that apply to get accepted into the program, and they earn an extra credit each year by coming in early in the morning. So students are coming in 2 to 3 times a week to work out with our fitness instructors from 7 till 8 in the morning. And the reason for the 2 to 3 times a week is to accumulate the hours necessary to be granted a credit. And the focus in the grade 9 and 10 portion of the program is on the personal fitness, the wellness, nutrition and stuff like that. And it's been a huge success. We've been actually blown away by the number of applications we've been getting, out of bounds students from non-feeder schools that are now beginning to apply to the program as well. And as April pointed out in the presentation, the space is becoming an issue at the school based on the number of applicants and stuff that we're getting. So, but I don't know if I want to get into space right now to answer the question proposed by Mr. Belch there, is that the program allows kids of all athletic abilities. It's labeled an athletic development program, but we have kids that are nationally recognized athletes that are attending scholarships in a year or two for lacrosse. And we have kids that are house league kids that play non-contact hockey in Millbrook. And so we have a wide range of kids that are in the program. Not all of them envision themselves going on to, athletics post-secondary. Some of them are looking at other careers. One young man, when he was doing his interviews, like, yeah, I'm going to be the general manager of the Maple Leafs. That was his goal, to get into sort of a management role in sports. And we're hoping
God knows they need it.
That's true. That's true. But we're hoping to be able to facilitate this through the EDGE program. And so the EDGE program has worked closely with the Crestwood Alumni Association and trying to generate some revenue to support some of the needs of the program. And it's, continuing to work on building some partnerships within the community. Myself, I'm a Crestwood grad and Cavan Monaghan resident, born and raised. I'm very, very obviously passionate about the program as one of the teachers that have been involved with the development and growth of it over the last couple of years. And it's just a great opportunity that, I wish I had this opportunity when I was a kid in high school, getting extra credits for working out and improving your fitness and health. And the extra credits are used by some of the students for many different reasons. I mentioned the high level athletes. They use it to get in extra training and extra skills. Some of the kids that are just, house league and stuff, they're using it to earn extra money by being able to work a couple extra hours a week for their post-secondary bills and stuff like that. So it's a pretty diverse program in that aspect. And I mentioned the athletes are quite diverse, but we believe it's going to be one of the magnet programs that Mr. Arnoux mentioned earlier, and be a big benefit to the program, to the school and community in general.
Steve, thank you very much for that response. Further questions from members of council? We'll leave Steve in just in case there's other questions specific to the EDGE program. I know my nephew transferred into Crestwood for this year specifically because of the EDGE program and the focus on athletics. And I know he's certainly quite enjoyed the opportunity. Any further questions with regards to the delegation? Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Thank you all. Well, there's a long list of participants now, so thanks to everyone for being a part of the delegation. And thanks, Steve, for providing some clarity to me as well. Obviously, a great program. I guess a couple different questions. Most of my questions are around the financial component, but I know the mayor's alluded to a further conversation to that, but I'll stick to the one subject prior to that one then. But I guess the question is the timeline you alluded to in the delegation, you're thinking like a 2-year horizon. I mean, obviously, when we have a 1% total tax levy that is producing about 100,000, it's a huge request. Is that, just wanted to confirm that they were thinking like it's a 2-year horizon, or I just wondered if it was potentially any longer?
Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you. And through you, we're suspecting a good 2 years. So if we were to receive support or endorsement from the municipality, we would circle back with our trustee champion, our vice chair, Angela Lloyd, to our own board of trustees and put some more detail behind timing. But just knowing where we're at now in the school year, and then the tender process and all of those sorts of things that would be involved, we would anticipate September 2023 would be probably a target for completion if everything went.
Very good.
So then just a follow-up question along the same sort of line. With regards to the sort of breakdown of the student population, obviously, there's a significant amount that comes from our township, and as the mayor said, several of us are among them. What are you approaching the other contributors to those percentages for a similar sort of investment? Because like if there's a municipal portion that is there, I mean, theoretically, for us to be carrying the full municipal contribution doesn't seem to make some sense. And obviously, our budget, I think, is about a 20th the size of the city of Peterborough's. So proportionately, I just didn't know if there were other contributors to that student population that are going to be approached for some sort of contribution, maybe not quantifying the same amount.
Go ahead, Chris.
We have not directly yet. The city of Peterborough, I know, having partnered with us at Thomas Stewart, has also partnered with, I believe, Fleming and Trent, as well as our coterminous Catholic board on some similar projects. So I'm not sure that we'd get much support from them, although we will circle back. Our greatest hope was, as Ms. Foster alluded to earlier, securing some other capital through federal and provincial grant programs that we have access to, as well as the school board's own contribution.
So just to clarify, just so I hear you right, are those other contributions would potentially reduce the 500,000 being asked for from the municipality, or would those compromise a part of the other 2 million?
We would envision they'd cover part of the remaining 2 million. So the whole project we anticipate to be roughly 2.5, and right now it would be 2 million from the school board, and I know we'd have a lot more success with our own board securing some additional partners.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good. Further questions from members of council? Councillor Belch.
Just a comment, Mayor. This has just come up on my radar screen, and look forward to being able to help any way I can. That our farm has just been sold, and look forward to looking at ways to contribute, since all of my sisters and myself went to Crestwood, and we're very active and look as a way to give back. So I look forward to it.
Very nice. Thank you, Councillor Belch. A couple questions. Have you been in touch at all with our Maple Leaf soccer program? It's obviously a very large organization in the municipality, and their demands on our one soccer field are over the top. So I'm just curious how those discussions, or if there's been any preliminary discussions with Maple Leaf Soccer and sort of their positioning on that. And I see Steve, you got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, so myself and some of the other teachers involved have reached out to Cavan FC, and they're very keen on becoming involved in some aspect with the field. And we've kicked around the idea of, that was a joke, kicked around the idea of some fundraising and those types of things to help offset some of the costs. And there's some bigger things in one of the phases April was talking about, the dome and stuff like that. So Cavan FC has been very eager, I guess, to answer your question, to get involved in any way that they can. They see it being a huge benefit to their program, obviously, with the loss of the Spyplex in Fowler's Corners, now as a basketball-only facility. And this would be a unique facility if we reach the process of getting it domed, where it could be used all season and stuff like that. But I'm getting ahead of myself. But yes, they have been reached out to and are very keen on being involved.
Very good. And just a testament to that group, I don't know whether you've worked with them in the past, but they were certainly one organization that when we dealt with them and they made promises for contributions, they delivered, and they paid for half the lights at our Maple Leaf Park, and we're certainly a fantastic organization to deal with. So take that as a recommendation that you're dealing with some top-notch individuals on that board. I can't say enough positive about them. One of the issues that we've had having only one soccer field at Maple Leaf Park, it was trying to secure other lands. And unbeknownst to us, despite Crestwood being in the township of Cavan Monaghan, when we were going through the process of the renovations, we became aware that we were unable to schedule Crestwood Field because it was actually part of the city's scheduling. So if the township was to embark on something like this and put a significant investment in on behalf of the township, would that be something that would change so that we'd be able to take over control and bookings of the fields? Because that's certainly something that would be of interest to us. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, there's no question that would be in whatever degree was necessary. We had thought, depending on the amount of time that the township, the municipality, and associated teams and clubs wanted to book, that the city of Peterborough would continue leasing out community use after all of that time was booked. So that's what we would get at in terms of preferred advanced booking privileges prior to the city of Peterborough. If the township and related community groups booked up most of it, you may actually want to take care of community use and all of that stuff yourself. So anything's possible, but we would envision backing out the city to whatever degree needed to be.
Very good. And just a question. So the TAS renovation ballpark was about the same as far as dollar values back in the day, 2.5 million, give or take. What was the financial request of the city of Peterborough ballpark at that time?
We asked them to split 50-50 on the costs, and they actually did the public tender and supervised the project. So we're very, very involved in it. And I believe, Mr. Mayor, that the prevalence of artificial turf fields over the last 8 years has become such that costs have come down to be a little more reasonable now. So they've stabilized anyway.
Very good. The one area, and this goes back to the cost, the straight out $500,000 request is certainly challenging for a small rural municipality as we've outlined. However, that being said, I do believe there can be discussions, and because this has just come before us and we're certainly recognizing various opportunities as they present, there may very well be an opportunity that this could be included within our current discussions on development charges. As that relates, there was an interesting one last week with the county relevant to leased facility and covering capital costs. And I know that the county has done that in the past with an ambulance base that we lease on Clonsilla. So there might be an opportunity. I know that's very preliminary, but it's certainly a fantastic potential opportunity for funding that we may be able to work into this. And it sounds like yourselves, as the board, you're very open to coming up with some arrangement that we can make work for all parties. So that's we're going to need a little leeway here in order to see what we can get to the table and how we can make this work. If you will indulge us a little time to have those conversations.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. And Chris and Angela specifically, I want to thank both of you because I believe it was shortly thereafter that the task field was completed that I came running saying, pick us, we're next. We want to go soon. And you said, all in good time, give it a little bit. We'll spread the money around for a little bit, but we will be back. I thank you. You didn't forget about the request, however many years ago that was. And we'll see what we can do with it. Thank you very much. I know you both put a lot of time into this discussion, into the background work for this. And with that, my suggestion for a resolution would be that this would be referred to the February 22nd meeting, where we're going to be having a further discussion on long-term planning within the township as it relates back to Parks and Recreation. I think this would fit in well to that discussion. That'll also provide ample time, I believe, and Ms. Hurley is available if it won't, to have some of those discussions relative to development charges and how that can relate back to a particular financing of it. And February 22nd happens to also be our budget date. So everything all comes to a head at that point. Ms. Hurley, would that work?
Can you just confirm what your ask is, Mr. Chairman? Just I know the end part I get, but are you asking for the whole budget discussion last week was quite an interesting topic. So I'm asking, what exactly are you confirming? Can you just say that for me?
So A, number one, receive the delegation. That's the easy one. B, I don't want to just drop it and that's the end of the conversation. I want this conversation to continue. In other words, I don't need the representatives from KPR to be present, but on February 22nd, the part of that conversation as it relates to the long-term Parks and Rec plan, which you're currently working on to bring back, I'm not asking you to incorporate anything in it. I'm just suggesting that this will become part of that discussion with regards to that long-term plan. And then furthermore, it is the budget meeting. And if this is going to be part of that discussion, I want to know how this relates back to development charges and what components could potentially be available through DCs versus what would have to be footed from a tax levy. And furthermore, how this would relate back to the current financing and new information that may come out for DCs as it relates to the other three large capital projects that we will be discussing on February 22nd.
Is that your motion, sir?
No, that was just an explanation.
Maybe you would like to break that down then, because that's quite a bit of information to come back on the 22nd. So like
the only piece that I'm looking for staff to bring back is to look into DCs as it would relate specifically to this project. That's the specific ask of staff, and that conversation will be held on February 22nd, because we're going to have further discussion during budget as it relates to the long-term plan. That's how it all pulls together. But what I need from staff is to bring back information specific to funding as it relates to DCs for this specific capital item.
If it's related to DCs on this specific capital item, I'm sure that Ms. Pope and myself would be happy to bring back that information.
Very good. That's the only staff request that I see, unless other members of council see any further request. Everything else is just open for discussion on February 22nd. Madam Clerk, did you get the short version?
Dear Mayor McFadden, I believe we're going to receive this presentation for information, and then you're directing staff to report back with the funding options to be included. So where I'm seeking clarification, and probably from the CAO and the Director of Finance, is as it relates back to the development charges and what components are available and what relates to the tax levy. That's the wording that I'm not 100%.
Yeah, shorten it up. We'll shorten it up, and we'll just say with funding options, which includes development charges, and that just leaves it open for
discussion.
Yeah.
Through you, Mayor McFadden, to the CAO and or the Director of Finance, are we comfortable with the motion that is currently on the table?
Through you, Chairman, to the clerk, I would say yes, if it's long as it's the last one, which was the shortest one that we've got.
That's why
Then
we have
yes.
live stream.
That is fine.
So we need a mover and a seconder. We'll go from there.
All right. Moved by Councillor Belch, second by Councillor Huntley. Any further discussion on the motion? Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Belch.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Steve, Chris, Angela, April, thank you very much. It took a lot of time and effort to get this before us today. I appreciate that. There's been a lot of work behind the scenes. Steve, keep up the fantastic work at Crestwood. I know the kids absolutely love your program, and thank you to each of you. Keep up the great work.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Only comment I'd say there is you guys should have coffee for the parents who have to drop the kids off that.
We're working on it. We're working on it. COVID.
That's a revenue generator right there.
Yeah.
All right, Council, that was the delegation. Anybody need a break? Councillor Belch?
I'm okay.
We're okay? Everybody good?
I'll take a break.
We'll take a break. Okay, we'll be right back.
5 minutes. Is that
3 minutes and 40 seconds.
Time for a coffee.
Welcome back. We have Councillor Belch, Deputy Mayor Graham, and Madam Clerk. We will await for Councillor Hunley.
No problem.
Oh, very good. All right, Madam Clerk, we're ready?
Are you Mayor McFadden? Yes, we are.
Yes, we are. I guess I should just double check that Mr. Connolly is present because it's his report that's coming up very quickly. And there he is. Excellent. Okay, we will resume our regular council meeting then. Item 10.1, minutes of the regular council meeting held at December 20th, 2021. Motion for those minutes. Deputy Mayor Graham and Councillor Belch. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
and Mayor McFadden.
Yes, motion is approved. Moving along, reports. Item 11.1, report planning 2022-02, County of Peterborough official plan, municipal comprehensive review, MCR, update and direction. Conley?
So through your worship to the rest of the council, I do have Ian Mudd, who's the manager of planning from the Peterborough County, as well as Sheridan Graham, who's the CEO for the County of Peterborough. They are attending, and maybe if you want to bring them in, if council has any questions, we can do that.
Very good. I'll get a motion then. Is it just Mr. Mudd and Ms. Graham?
As I know, yes.
Very good. Motion then from Council Deputy Mayor Graham, Councillor Belch. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Welcome Sheridan and welcome Ian.
Dear Mayor McFadden, they're joining us.
Very good. Welcome. And over to Mr. Connolly for his report.
Excellent, thank you. So through your worship to the rest of council, what you have before you is planning report 2022-02. That's the County of Peterborough official plan, municipal comprehensive review, update and direction. There are two recommendations, the second one being an either or. First one being that council receive report planning 2022-02, County of Peterborough official plan, OP, municipal comprehensive review, update and direction. And two, that council provides staff direction to either I, confirm its commitment to opt in, that is enfold the township OP to the county OP, and ultimately appeal the township of Cavan Monaghan OP once the county OP has been approved by the province of Ontario, or I, continue to support the county OP but not fold the township official plan, that being the township OP, into the county OP, in other words, opt out, and then bring the township OP into conformity once the new county official plan has been approved by the province of Ontario. What we have before you through your worship, through council, is that in October 2nd, 2017, Township Council had passed a motion, and this was after a presentation by county planning staff to basically indicate that they were developing the county official plan. That's been a number of years that's been going forward. A lot of changes with provincial legislation and also provincial policy. But what happened is in October 2nd, the idea was that Township OP would be rolled into the County OP process. And here we are 4 years later, almost looking at how that would happen. So what has happened since then is through a technical advisory committee, township staff, specifically Director Karen Ellis and Planner Christina Coulter, have been providing leadership and contribution, participating in what has been, I believe, 34 technical advisory committees with the township, the county, and the other townships, as well as the First Nations, as part of bringing this forward. We brought this forward through a number of meetings. Most recently, through December 3rd, we had a special council meeting where we identified a number of key issues that Township Council should be aware of, what was coming in the Peterborough County OP, as well as those are very specific to the township. On top of that, one of the directions, and the report speaks to this, is there was a request for a legislation and policy change review to be provided. That is in this report as well as a legal review. One of the attachments to the report in front of you today is that legal review, in which a number of things have been raised by Aird & Bearless, Tom Helinski, our counsel for Aird & Bearless, specifically answering questions about what has changed from Provincial Planning Act, from provincial policy in terms of the growth plan, those changes, as well as legal review of the type of considerations that Township Council should take into consideration. We're looking at whether or not it wants to continue to stay in with respect to the county official plan, or in fact opt out and then continue, still support the county official plan as it goes forward, but on top of that, maintain or its current official plan as we go forward, and then later on bring its OP into conformity with the county OP once the province has approved that. In the absence of going into a deeper dive in that report, that's there before council. If you have any questions, again, Ian Mudd, the manager of planning from the county, as well as Sheridan Graham, the CEO, are here for any questions that council may have.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Conley. Any questions from members of council? Deputy Mayor Graham.
Through you, Mayor, I was just going to maybe suggest that if Sheridan or Ian have any comments, I mean, they came all this way and were rescheduled, that there was a comment that they wanted to make with regards to the discussion, I'd be happy to hear it.
Through you, I can start, and thank you for the opportunity. Obviously, we've come many years working on this new OP, and it's been a long process, and we really have appreciated the representatives that the township has had on the TAC committee. They've really contributed to the process. Obviously, either way, the county will support the township's decision and move forward in either way that your council decides. Ian, if you had something to add.
No, here to answer any questions. If you had any process-related questions with respect to, for example, how amendments are dealt with with existing municipalities, we currently have 4 that utilize the county official plan as their local document. And you know, if there were any questions of council on say how a local amendment would be processed once it's at the county level, I'd be happy to go through that just to give you an idea of council and staff's continued involvement in those projects.
Very good. Any further questions from members of council? Councillor Huntley.
Through you, Mayor, I guess, Mr. Mudd, since you brought it up, I guess you could maybe highlight what the differences would be in you know, an OPA going through, whether it was held at the municipal level or at the county level.
Sure, thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. So when the county was first delegated approval authority from the province back in the 90s, we went through a process where we opened the OP up to some municipalities. We originally started with 3 that wanted to get rid of their local plan and roll it into the county official plan. And then we later had a 4th municipality that did so. So what we did was we created a procedural guideline very early on in the process. And we fully appreciated that for those 4 municipalities that were utilizing the local plan, it was still very important that their councils were very involved in the process because, you know, the amendments are taking place within your municipal boundary. So right now we have a pre-consultation process, and with that pre-consultation process, township staff are invited as well as other agencies that are generally involved in any Planning Act application. So planning staff at the township are aware from day one what the issues are, what the development is about. They can flag if there's any local issues or local concerns, studies that they would like to see in support of any particular development. Once the application is filed, it is circulated to the municipality so that they are aware that the application has been filed. Because they are involved in some of the aspects of the processing of the application, we do actually transfer a portion of the application fee to the municipality to recognize that township staff are still involved in components of it. When we have the public meeting, we undertake circulation. We generally touch base with the municipality to see what your preferred method is to get it out to your local residents. We post it on our website, we put it in the paper. Generally, the local municipality puts it in their website as well. If there's a specific local paper that the municipality prefers is utilized, we follow that. And we generally ask that the local municipality assist us with the mail out to local residents within 120 meters of the property. Once that is done, when we have the public meeting has been delegated by county council to the local township councils. So similar to when we hold a public meeting for a planned subdivision, your council will actually host the public meeting. There will be a representative of county council that attends as an appointed person from county council, as well as members of the county planning department. So we will present the application to the public. We're there to answer any questions of the public, as well as your own staff have the ability to speak to the application and provide any local context or local issues around it. And then what we rely on is the municipality to then pass a resolution and make a recommendation to county council. So when we receive that recommendation, when we write our planning report at the county level, we consider all of the required planning legislation that you currently, your staff is doing right now, and we make a recommendation to county council for adoption or denial of the official plan amendment. The current system that you have right now is the application is made at your office. We're generally involved in the pre-consultation process. Your staff processes the application, hosts the public meeting, does a report to council. Council adopts an amendment, and then they pass it on to the county council, or as we're the approval authority. So again, we at the staff level look at the amendment, review the legislation, and prepare a planning report to county council for their approval. So in both cases, county council is ultimately the final approval authority for any local amendments.
Very good. Thank you, Ian. Any further questions from members of council? Councillor Belch.
Through you, Mayor, to Ian. Our choice is to either opt in or opt out. What would be the implication for opting out? Just that it would cost us as a municipality more money?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the implication of opting out is there's a requirement that you would have to bring your current official plan into conformity with the new county official plan, I believe within 1 year of the date of the adoption of the plan. So there would obviously be costs and a planning process associated with that.
Very good. Further questions from members of council? Councillor Huntley.
Thank you, Chair. I guess one last question, Mr. Mudd, is what sort of KPIs or SLAs are associated with this stuff? Like, is there an accountability in the timeline these things take? Is it? I mean, within a municipality, obviously, people complain to us, we complain to our staff. Staff gets moving, kind of thing. But when there's yet another third party in there, my fear is, the timelines can just keep ticking away, and there can be a lot of people pointing fingers that it wasn't my fault that it took so long, that it was somebody else's fault that it took so long. And I'm just like, how do you structure this in such a way that there's accountability, responsibility, and efficiency?
So through you, Mr. Chair, so we're obligated, obviously there's timelines that govern applications under the Planning Act. For the most part, our goal is to move amendments along, obviously, which is the key component behind a pre-consultation meeting with applicants is to identify the studies that are required in order to move an application along. When it's formally filed, it's a complete application, and we move forward. I find most of the time where we run into time delays is through peer reviews of those studies. If additional work is required to be done in order to address the concerns of a peer reviewer or a specific agency, oftentimes can be there can be delays in the system. To be quite honest with you, as the developer goes back and provides more formal response to those aspects of the application that additional comment or additional work is required by a specific agency. But otherwise, we look at hosting the public meeting as soon as the peer review and the agency comments are in, receiving the comments from the municipality that they are either in support of the amendment or not in support of the amendment. And then we generally bring a report forward to council. Just, we've done some at the county level for some of our other municipalities. They're completed within 3 to 4 months, which is a fairly swift time frame for processing an amendment, as long as it's complete application and all the ones are there. Materials that we need. Obviously, some others become a lot more complicated. Depending on the issue, you can have a number of issues that are raised by the public that either your council may want to see addressed before you're comfortable with providing a recommendation to the county. So there's a number of variables that really deal with the timing of any specific amendment, and it's really based on a number of factors. But I can advise that as far as moving applications along, our goal at the county is to not delay. I think with amendments that we currently have received from your municipality as well as other ones, when we receive the adopted amendment from your municipality, we get it before council on the next council meeting, if time permits, or at least the one following that. So our goal is to get applications before council as soon as possible.
So follow-up question.
Go ahead.
Follow-up question for Ms. Graham. So then, do you maintain some form of an analytic dashboard that tells you how these things are progressing, like how many you're getting out in 3 months and how many are taking 9 months, and doing any kind of back solving to figure out if something took 14 months, what it was? These are pretty important statistics and data points. I'm just curious whether you have that.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I would say informally we do within the department, but not a formal process. We're also currently looking at some planning software that we would utilize that would help with some of that, some of the logistics associated with that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, through you, Chair, I guess I'll just augment what Ian said. We are in the process right now. We've gone through a review and selection of planning software, web-based planning software, and we'll be implementing that early in the year.
Very good. Any further questions from members of council? Being none, council consideration of the report. 2 choices. First is to receive it. And the second one is a choice. Opt in or opt out? Councillor Huntley?
I'll move to receive
it. That's not helpful. And you making a second part to that? You're going to drag this one out.
All right, I'll move to receive it, and I'll remove to opt in.
Okay, do I have a seconder? No. Okay. All right. Another motion to receive and opt out. Do I have a mover? Councillor Belch, seconder? Deputy Mayor Graham, Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Belch?
Yes.
Mayor McFadden?
Yes.
Councillor Huntley?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham?
Yes.
Motion is approved. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Sheridan. And thank you, John.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Hey, next item, report planning 2022.
Hi, I'm just in the.
Thank you. Next report planning 2022-03 Veltri and Son Limited Colebrook Drive Part Lot Control Exemption Bylaw Block 18 Plan 45M-259. Miss Ellis, unless you want to go through your report, I'm pretty confident we can move this report and accept the recommendation. Deputy Mayor Graham, seconded by Councillor Huntley. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Belch?
Mute. You'll have to unmute.
Yes.
Mayor McFadden?
Yes.
Councillor Huntley?
Yes.
and Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Next item, report planning 2022-04, update status report 1066 Sire Line. Mr. Conley?
Your worship, to the rest of council, what we have before you is council planning report 2022-04. That's the update status report 1066 Sire Line. The recommendation being that council receive report planning 2022, my apologies, -4, too many twos. Update status report 1066 Sire Line for information, as I have been providing council all through last year and into this year, providing an update with respect to the work that's been done on 1066 Sire Line. The only thing to really update since the last update is that work is continuing on with the traffic impact study. Some of the scope of work was refined in consultation with the Ministry of Transportation. There was a request to have weekend traffic information that has been negotiated to be off in terms of not necessary for the scope of work being required for this traffic impact study. So again, that work continues. I expect to hopefully in the next status review to be able to provide a little bit more of a substantial review in terms of that. I think one of the things looking at the timing, I'm still looking optimistically with the idea that this can be brought forward and brought to resolution by the end of March of this year. If there are any changes, I certainly will provide that. And if there are any questions, I'm here to answer any questions.
Very good. Questions from members of council? Just so for clarification, so we're doing a traffic study that doesn't require any, that doesn't have any weekends. We've got clearance from MTO that it doesn't require weekends because the use that we haven't identified yet won't use weekends. Is that the rationale?
What happened with when the original discussion of the scope of work, one of the things that was recommended at staff level from MTO was that include weekend. In dealing with and speaking with our traffic consultant, they indicated that's a significant more work in terms of not only the data but also what that means from the standpoint of the study. I went back and negotiated with the traffic consultant and MTO so that the weekend work was not required. So basically, the study is a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more straightforward. So it should be less onerous and therefore hopefully quicker to complete.
Very good. And we have that in writing from MTO?
We do.
Excellent. Very good. Any further questions for Mr. Conley? Okay, just an update on this topic. I did speak with staff from MTO on Friday last week, and they are investigating this particular issue and how we've been unnecessarily held up in our process. So I will certainly provide council an update when that comes forward. Mr. Conley, in the meantime, thank you very much for pushing this through and getting it done. It certainly won't affect our timelines at this point, but I think the point needs to be made for a provincial government that's trying to push forward jobs and employment. You need to be supportive of municipalities that are trying to do so and not becoming an impediment to the process. So, Mr. Conley, it's nothing to do with you. It's out of your control. Thank you for your efforts. We will get there eventually. And with that, I would take a motion then to receive that report. This one's an easy one. Come on, Deputy Mayor Graham and Councillor Belch. Madam Clerk.
There are no easy ones.
Councillor Huntley.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
Mayor McFadden.
Yes.
And Councillor Belch.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Next item, Report Public Works 2022-01, New Parks and Public Works, Millbrook Depot, P-PW-21-05. Mr. Hancock, do you want to say anything specific to this one other than the fact that we've already talked about it?
No, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to thank council for approval on this last Thursday at the budget meeting, and we hope to contact the contractor and set up a pre-con meeting as soon as possible.
Very good. Motion then to receive that. Do we need it? Yeah, we'll just receive. Deputy Mayor Graham, Councillor.
Through you, Mayor McFadden, we don't need to do anything with this. We just spoke to the fact that it was already spoke to at the special budget meeting, and that's the minutes will be referred into, and that will be what my minutes reflect.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Excellent. Done. Next report, Public Works 2022-02, tree replacement, 1 King Street, Millbrook.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to council, the recommendation before you is a receive as information. The council received Public Works Report 2022-02 for information. It is in regard to tree replacement at 1 King Street, Millbrook, and due to the location and high visibility in the downtown and the aesthetics of the downtown. We have brought this report before council. The background on this is that we have been in conversations, both Bridget and I, with Nexicom and their representatives, and talked about the health of the two existing Crimson King maple trees that are located on our property at the Cenotaph on King Street. We've gone through both an arborist report, which is attached to this report, basically recommending that these trees are in a high degree of decline, and they are notably some major impacts of the gypsy moth, which is hard on a lot of our trees. And it has recommended specifically two types for replacement. One being the linden, it was little leaf linden, as noted in the report, and the other is a native red maple. And we also were in contact with Dan Rowlandson, who is representative with the Ministry of Natural Resources, to also review these trees and location, etc. Generally speaking, the trees are in very bad shape. Our position is the trees should be removed as soon as possible, and that we get to work on replacement with, as noted in this report, 2 red maples. They are native species to our area. They are basically relatively close in color to what's been there, and they are hardier against the gypsy moth than the little leaf linden. The linden is more susceptible to gypsy moth than the maples. So we are proceeding with that. We have in the funds budget for tree replacements in the operating budget of Public Works. We have placed 2 trees on hold on an order with an arborist in order to get the largest trees we can. Those are noted in the report to be approximately 4 inches, which is really what they call around the trunk at the bottom size. It's a caliper. And our intent is to have the 2 trees removed probably early this spring. We'll do some stump removal and clean up there where there might be an infestation of the gypsy moth, and then to move ahead with the replacement as soon as weather permits early this year. And this is, as I say, an information report. It's been a lot of discussion over the trees, but generally trying to save them and prolong this is not really going to get us to where we want to be. I think we need to move ahead with 2 new trees. Bridget, I believe, is also here if she wants to comment or is available to answer questions also, because she certainly has been involved with the downtown group on the tree replacement and where we are.
Very good. Questions from members of council? Councillor Belch, and then I got Councillor Huntley. Go ahead, Councillor Belch.
Through you, Mayor, to Bridget, any idea once you put in these new trees, what's the length of time till sort of anticipated full growth, or growth such that they'll be larger than obviously when planted?
Through you, Mayor McFadden, to Councillor Belch, I'm actually going to maybe pass that back to the Director of Public Works. Unfortunately, I didn't do well in horticulture when I was in high school, so I do apologize. But Wayne, are you able to answer that?
You, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Belch, I'm not, generally these trees, as they are fairly large going in, I mean, they're going to grow, and they grow gradually. So I don't think you're going to see the existing trees have a trunk on them, probably 10 to 12 inches. These trees will take some time to get to that maturity. So I'd suggest it's going to be a number of years before we get there, but I'm a little bit like Bridget. I'm not sure I can quantify that in the number of inches they may grow per year.
just looking as to whether it's, you know, a 10-year growth or a 30-year growth.
I would tend to think that you're going to have that within 10 years. I think you'll have the same size as what you have at least, but it's a little bit on adverse effects on the trees, et cetera. So if everything goes well, I think you'll have trees that will represent what you have there fairly closely within the next 10 years.
Very good.
Very good. Councillor Huntley, I saw your hand. Or maybe it was the same questions.
No, not quite. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I guess to Mr. Hancock, I guess your decision between the red maples and the little leaf lindens, you attributed to the gypsy moths, but I mean the gypsy moths are only they're kind of a, you know, a freak occurrence that, you know, we haven't seen in 30 years. Like, is this based on the fact that you're expecting a reoccurrence of them next year, or that for the long term round? Because I'm sure there's pests and other things out there that affect the red leaf maple more than they do a linden. You just picked the one that was the most prevalent today. So
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Huntley, I think when we looked at the tree replacement, the red maple is a hardy tree. It's well recognized in the area. It is fairly close in color to the trees that are there now. It is more hardier and less susceptible to the gypsy moth, but it's a hardier tree than the little leaf linden as referred. And I believe it's a better tree for the area. That's my personal view, and that's why we recommended that type. And both trees came out of the arborist report, but they did say that the little leaf linden was more susceptible. Whether the gypsy moth is there or not, I think the maple, the red maple as we call them, I think it's a good tree for that location.
Very good. Deputy Mayor Graham.
Through you, Mayor. Yeah, I was speaking with a friend of mine who's an environmentalist, and he said that one of the benefits, if you want to call it that, to a prolonged experience of -20 is that is virtually terminal for most of these gypsy moths. Now obviously they can come back in the future, but it sounds as though with the amount of -20 degrees that we've been experiencing, most of those eggs are going to have a hard time surviving this year. So that was good news, I guess, if you want to, you know, keep yourself warm inside the house and thinking about all those dying gypsy moths. Maybe that's a warming thought for some. But anyways, Wayne, I just wanted to know, did the arborist make a comment about the susceptibility of the red maples to Councillor Huntley's comment? Was there other species of trees that we investigated to come up with those that would be the most resilient? And obviously also there are, you know, there's a significant, you know, lack of distance to, you know, main, you know, municipal infrastructure with the locations of those trees. Were there other species that were identified that might not present, you know, whether it's sidewalks breaking or interfering with underground infrastructure? That was that a factor in also choosing the red maple?
To Mr. Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Graham, the arborist was on site. He did both the field inspection. He specifically recommended the two types in the report as examples. He's used the red maple as a hardier example, but both he believes will you know, live in that area, as I put it. Then that's what shows up in the report. We didn't get into there is, you know, a variety of trees that you could place in that location. He's specifically focused on the two, and we've accepted that the one is better than the other in relation to certain diseases. So our recommendation falls back to where he was. And the other point was that we are able to get a larger, what they say, caliper size related to the red maple, and that is helpful too, because that sort of reduces the impact in the area if you have a larger trunk size, larger tree, generally speaking. So I'm basing it on what his report is telling us to date and what our conversations have been to date.
Very good. Any further questions on the report? If not, this is definitely got to be one of your very shortest recommendations, Mr. Hancock. It doesn't even fill a full line. We got receive for information. Motion? Deputy Mayor Graham, and Councillor Huntley. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
and Councillor Huntley.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Next item is item 11.6, Report Corporate Services 2022-01, Council Vacancy. Ms. Page.
Through your Mayor McFadden, to yourself and the rest of members of council, it is with sadness that I am presenting Report Corporate Services 2022-01, Council Vacancy. Before you, the legislation does lay out that if a seat becomes vacant, in this situation, it's under 259(1)(h), which is the death of a member, we are to declare the seat vacant, which is what we're doing. You have to do it at your first or your second meeting. That is today's meeting. That is part of today's intent. The other part of today's intent, and is also laid out by the legislation, is to fill the vacancy. As per section 263 of the Municipal Act, it lays out the options for filling the vacancy. You can fill the vacancy by appointing a person who has consented to accept the office of appointment, or B, by running a by-election. It should be noted, if we were to run a by-election, that would require bylaw to be passed prior to the 60 days of the seat being declared vacant. If the council's choice today is to appoint a member, there have historically been common practices that have been used. You could consider appointing the second runner-up. You could go through the process of inviting eligible people or applicants, or you could go through the process of appointing a person should council wish to do that. Today, we have the option to select a person, to appoint a person, to appoint a runner-up, to go through the process of the by-election, to talk about things. I'm not sure if there's any specific questions. If we want to just open it to that, if you want me to kind of go into more detail about the report, I'll just kind of leave it to council and turn it back over to you, Mayor McFadden. Today we do need, sorry, the only thing I want to say is the recommendations in front of us, we do need to take those into consideration today. Number one is definitely 2 and 3.
There's no optional ones, 1, 2, and 3?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Page. Questions from members of council? No questions? Deputy Mayor Graham.
Through you to the clerk, Cindy, with regards to the timeline, I'm assuming now that we've formalized the vacancy today, we have 60 days from the conclusion of this meeting, or I guess of this report, to fulfill that appointment. I'm just, with regards to the approaching individuals about fulfilling the vacancy, I just wanted to make sure that we know exactly how much time we have, especially because the meeting was postponed.
Through you, Mayor McFadden, to Deputy Mayor Graham, that's a great question. It's the date that the seat is declared vacant. It's 60 days from that date. So hypothetically speaking, if council was to support either promoting the second runner-up, or they have a name that they would like for consideration, staff would then contact that candidate. They would confirm their eligibility to make sure that they are an eligible candidate, which falls in compliance with the Municipal Elections Act as well as the Municipal Act. And as long as they were compliant or eligible and a willing participant, I would report back to council at the next meeting with the name, if that was the way council chose to proceed today.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Ms. Hurley, I saw you turn your camera on. Do you have anything to add to that conversation? Ms. Hurley?
No, I have nothing to add. So.
Oh, sorry. Camera came on. I thought there was something to be said. Any further questions from members of council? Seeing none. Okay. So I did receive a phone call earlier today from Bill Shaw. Bill Shaw being Kathy Moore's husband, and he expressed his interest in the position of Kathy's seat. And to be quite frank, I know we've had each of us have put a lot of thought into this, of how we're going to proceed, the procedures, all of the means by which we can follow the Municipal Act, whether it's an appointment, whether it's a committee of appointments, or whether it's a by-election. And I'm sure there's been some sleepless nights of how we're going to fill out our council. That being said, the suggestion from Bill did catch me off guard. But to be frank, myself personally, I can't imagine a better suited individual that would fill the shoes and carry on the legacy of our councillor Kathy Moore. And so I would highly recommend the appointment of Bill Shaw to that position, and I will make a motion to appoint Bill Shaw as the Cavan Ward councillor following the rules and regulations as set forth by our clerk, Ms. Page, to first ensure that he's willing to accept the position, ensure his eligibility, and then I would assume Ms. Page come back with a report. Very good. So I would make that motion. Seconder? Councillor Huntley, any discussion on that motion? Councillor Huntley.
I guess through you, Chair, I guess Ms. Page, I guess the clock is ticking, and I guess it would take you to the next council meeting to come back. But I guess at the next council meeting, if there turns to be a problem with the eligibility or the
just
process.
One second, Councillor Huntley, if we can, okay, Ms. Page has muted.
So I apologize. There's a fire call. And so I've just got, Patty's just going to quickly mute this because Councillor Huntley cut out half of his question there. I apologize.
Yeah,
so we've
I couldn't hear you either. Sorry, Councillor Huntley. It is an important discussion. If you could rewind and sort of say that over again.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I guess it was more of a comment I wanted confirmation on than a question. And it's I mean, the clock is ticking, right? So if there's something wrong with the appointment, or the eligibility isn't correct, or anything like that, like I guess we've only lost a week because our next council meeting is the next week, correct? Like it's like or is it 2 weeks? I just, how's this timing work? Because we're going to chew up a lot of time between council meetings if we do one-off appointments, to check for eligibility. Like is that the most efficient way to do this?
Through you, Mayor McFadden, to Councillor Huntley. So that's entirely up to council on doing that, but it would be brought back at the February 7th council meeting. We could, at the call of council and the chair, we could call special meetings if that's what we see fit to address this. We do have our 60 days, which brings us to the 24th of March. Yeah, 24th of March, which our last council meeting for that day would be March 21st. So if, let's say today, council does support appointing Bill Shaw, and I reach out to Bill and he doesn't accept it, then that would be the follow-up, that would be my follow-up report, and then council would either at that point entertain the idea of the by-election or choose an alternative appointment. But it does say within 60 days. And yes, every day does tick from the date of the declaration of the seat.
Right. So I guess through you, Chair, I guess my concern there is if we try to appoint somebody, it doesn't work, then we try to appoint somebody else, it doesn't work, then we're already in March. And I don't think there's time, if you want to run a by-election, to run a 2-week by-election or a 3-week by-election. So I'm not sure we have I don't think there's a good solution to this one. It's just more of an observation than anything else.
If I might add, if it was different and I was just throwing the name out there and we really didn't know, that's one thing, but I know he did actually reach out to me. So whether he's interested, I can't imagine he called me if he wasn't interested, number one, and number two, he lives in the township. So I would leave it to the clerk to confirm it. Outside of that, there really is no other requirements that I'm aware of that would have to qualify unless something has changed in his mind since 2 hours ago when he called me to indicate that he would really appreciate the opportunity to fill her seat.
Yeah.
Any further questions on the motion before we call the vote? Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Belch.
Yes.
Mayor McFadden.
Yes.
Councillor Huntley.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
The motion is passed. Very good. Thank you, Council. I know it's been a difficult time since the passing of Councillor Moore. It's been difficult on council, it's been difficult on staff, and most importantly, it's been difficult on the family. And I must say that today's phone call was certainly welcome. And I was glad I took that phone call earlier today because it made a very difficult situation easier for me, I know, to process. So thank you, everybody, for your indulgence and getting through this. And thank you, Madam Clerk, for putting together a very difficult report that you never want to have to put together for those reasons. So thank you. Next item is report.
Mayor McFadden, I do thank everyone for all of their support, but we do have to just finish the other two if you're okay with that.
Right,
so
of course. I got carried away, didn't I?
No problem. The seat's declared, so we can. Do we want to break these out? I mean, The motion we just passed answers motion number 2. Do we want to appoint somebody for the vacancy? Do we want to wait and see what happens with
Was
Mr.
that
Shaw?
We're done 1 and 2, aren't we?
So if we want to add 1 to that, we can, as long as
Yeah.
you move and your seconder agree. Mayor McFadden and Councillor Huntley, you agree that we'll add number 1 to
1
that
and
as
2?
well?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Okay.
Position 3, we haven't talked about it as a council. I was respectfully going to request, I don't sit on any local boards or committees. My vacancy is open. I was going to suggest that I sit on both the Cavan Monaghan Library Board, and I was going to sit on Kawartha Region Conservation Authority Board if my council would indulge me. Work? Councillor Huntley, go ahead.
So I will move that. Let's
move it. Second, Deputy Mayor Graham. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
and Councillor Belch.
Yes.
Motion
Thank
is
you again,
approved.
Council.
Ms. Page, thank you. We got through 1, 2, and 3, and you did tell us before we started that we had to get something for all 3 of them. So thank you for reining in the pulling in the reins and making sure we got that 3rd one done. Next item 11.7 report, CAO report and capital status. Ms. Hurley, do we have any questions for Ms. Hurley? Seeing none. The one item I would like to add is to have staff bring back something relative to the permitting of clothing bins in the township of Cavan Monaghan, because they continue to raise their themselves, and it's an issue, and I think we need an approach to deal with those. They do serve a valuable purpose, but they also serve as a dump when they're not managed appropriately and properly, and it continues to be an excessive use of our bylaw staff policing something when it gets out of control, and we've certainly taken a lot of heat for it on social media, and it's not necessary. So I would just ask that staff bring back a report of how we can deal with that moving forward. It does serve a great purpose. I know there's bins across from Foodland, which seem to be managed very well, but then we've had other instances where they're managed very poorly, and it is an absolute eyesore for anybody going by. As long as council is okay with that direction, we'll bring back something to deal with that. Ms. Page, do you want a direction to add that to the list?
Through Mayor McFadden, I would say yes. Oh,
all right.
Through Mayor McFadden, the CAO was shaking her head no.
Okay, well, I got a mover and no seconder because Huntley shook his head, so we're halfway there.
No, actually, I was just going to ask Ms. Page, do we normally have a mover or seconder to add items to the outstanding action, or do we just take it as direction and we add them on, just for clarity?
No, we get a motion for clarification so staff's clear what that direction is, and then we get a second motion to receive it for information.
That is sounds perfect. Thank you. Exactly what we're looking for.
And it's exactly what I got a mover from Councillor Huntley. Do I have a seconder? Okay. Deputy Mayor Graham. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
Councillor Huntley.
Absolutely.
Councillor Belch.
Yes.
And Mayor McFadden.
Yes, motion is approved. We look forward to that report. Any other items on report status?
Through Mr. Chairman, I don't have anything more to add as well, except for once our budget does get approved, whatever the final budget is, we will accommodate and upload that into the outstanding action as well.
Perfect. Very good. Excellent. Madam Clerk, do you want a motion then just to receive the report?
Yes, please, Mayor
Motion
McFadden.
Received. Deputy Mayor Graham, Councillor Belch. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Mayor McFadden.
Yes.
Councillor Belch.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
And Councillor Huntley.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Council Committee verbal reports. Councillor Huntley.
Sure. The BIA was quite pleasantly surprised with a donation from Kawartha Downs a couple of weeks ago, which substantially increased their ability to host events and contribute to some beautification of downtown Millbrook. So big thank you to Kawartha Downs for that, and look forward to the great things that the BIA can do with those funds. The Mr. Hack Committee is eagerly awaiting approval of the budget so they can get going on their work programs for this term. So guess we'll wait and find out what happens after our next budget meeting.
Very good. And any update, any new chairs of Orca or anything to report on?
Oh yeah, I guess that was one that too. So yes, I was elected the chair of the Orca board last week as well at the Orca AGM. So thank you for reminding me of that new role.
Very good. Very good, and congratulations. Deputy Mayor Graham.
Nothing to report. We have North Valley Trails tonight.
Very good. Councillor Belch.
Nothing to report at this time. The Ganaraska doesn't meet until I think February 20th or something like that.
Very good. And I have nothing further to report, but I will next time from the library and from Court of Conservation. Oh, can I get a motion then for those verbal reports? Councillor Belch, Councillor Huntley, Madam. Now that's ironic. Deputy Mayor Graham, you're the only one to put your hand up there, and I was looking at the other two, and I got a mover from Councillor Belch if he's okay, and a seconder from Councillor Huntley. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
and Councillor Belch.
Yes.
Motion is approved. There's no general business, no correspondence for information, and no correspondence for action. Being a bylaw number 2022-01, being a bylaw to temporarily exempt certain lands within registered plan 45M-259 for the Township of Cavan from part lot control, be read a first, second, third time, signed by the mayor and the clerk. And corporate seal attest thereto. Moved by Deputy Mayor Graham, Councillor Huntley, Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden.
Yes. Motion is approved. There is no unfinished business. Any notices of motion? Confirming bylaw, being bylaw number 2022-02, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the meeting held January 17th, 2022. Be read for
January
third time, signed.
24th.
What did I read? Oh, 17th. Madam Clerk, you are right on the ball today. Thank you. Yes, held January 24th, 2022. To your point earlier, Councillor Huntley, nothing on the agenda has changed. It still has the old date, correct? You read a first, second, third time, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the corporate seal attached thereto. Moved by Councillor Belch and Deputy Mayor Graham. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
and Councillor Huntley.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Motion to adjourn, Councillor Huntley and Councillor Belch. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
and Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
Motion is